Is there a magic trade to fix what's wrong with the Cleveland Cavaliers? The answer might disappoint you. The Cleveland Cavaliers are off to a lackluster start to this NBA season, so it's at least worth exploring the question that some are already asking: will they make a trade? I was actually asked this question before the season started when I went on the Block the Shot to Stop, and it was phrased to me this way: will the Cavs make a big trade? And my answer to that was no. And here's why. This front office has continuously defended the core four, and I think that they're committed to them at least for the remainder of this season. And also, DeAndre Hunter was the big trade acquisition of last year. He hasn't been in Cleveland for a full calendar year yet, so I doubt they'd pull the plug on him that quickly. And if those two assumptions are true, that basically kills the whole conversation, right? Maybe not. Let's explore right after you click subscribe and help me get to my goal of 1,000 subscribers by the Christmas Day games. And honestly, I could really use the help getting there at this point. So please. So before we talk about any of the trades that the Cavs could actually make, we have to establish the ones that they can't. According to Spot Track, which I will tell you, if you're going to do any fake trade conversations at all, you should be using the Spot Track trade machine. It's the most accurate at reaching a legal trade within the new CBA, and you can avoid looking like an idiot with a major platform talking about trades that literally cannot happen. No, they are not a sponsor of this video. No, they do not know I exist. Keith Smith replied to my tweet once, I think. That's about it. Anyways. According to Spot Track, the Cavs have the highest payroll in the NBA this year, the only team over $242 million. That puts them over the second apron and forces them into several roster building penalties. But the most relevant for this particular conversation is that they cannot aggregate salaries in a trade, which means they cannot send multiple players out in a deal. So anyone who has said they should trade Darius Garland and Max Strus to get LeBron James or anything similar, it literally can't happen unless they get under the second apron first, which they would have to basically gut the entire core to accomplish anyway. So then why would you be trading for a guy like LeBron if that's what you were doing? By the way, this is not an anti-LeBron trade video. It's just an easy example. The other major thing that they cannot do is take back any additional salary from the trade. None whatsoever. So whatever player or players they were able to be receiving in this deal, they cannot make a single penny more than the one player that the Cavs are sending out in said deal. So let's review that. The front office is committed to the core four. Therefore, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen are all safe. DeAndre Hunter just got there, so he's safe. They can only trade one of their players in the deal, and they cannot take back salary that is even a minor penny that doesn't even get made anymore, more than what that player makes on their salary. So what options even exist? Well, since you can only trade one player away and you can't take back more money, at the very least, that one player definitely won't be on a rookie scale or minimum contract, which eliminates pretty much all but four guys. You have Max Strus, who makes $15.9 million, Lonzo Ball, who makes $10 million, Sam Merrill, who makes just under $8.5 million and can't be traded until the middle of January, and Dean Wade, who makes $6.6 million. The non-taxpayer mid-level exception this year is $14.1 million, which isn't super important for you to remember right now. I'm just using that as an example to say that only one of the Cavs' somewhat likely trade options is making more than a non-tax mid-level exception. So almost any trade you try to come up with is going to be below the standard that the league has set for what the kids would refer to as mid. If you've managed to not fall asleep to this point, you may have come to the proper conclusion so far that the realistic options for improving the roster via trade for the Cavs is going to be limited. But we're not done limiting them. Lonzo Ball has been a Cav for about 5.5 minutes. It's hard to imagine they're going to use him in a trade that quickly, especially if he's still healthy. Knock on wood. Sam Merrill is shooting 43% on threes and taking over 8 per game at the point that I'm making this video. And he's only making $8 million. They aren't trading him even when he's eligible, unless he starts playing like Terry Rozier for the next 2 months. I don't know if Dean Wade has ever had nearly as much value on any other team in the NBA than what he does for the Cavs. For so long, he was the only player on the roster with his combination of size and positional versatility. And while he's not that anymore, he is still very important, and it's hard to imagine they're going to get a suitable upgrade for $6.5 million or less. So all of that brings us back to one name, Max Strus. And Max Strus is currently injured and reportedly will not be making a return until at least the new year. Maybe it would take some sort of setback on the timeline in order to get there, but could you see the Cavs reaching a situation where they make the decision that they need to get production for the money that they're paying him right now? It sounds a little cold, right? But consider this. The clock is ticking for this team. They're in the second apron, so the penalties will only continue to get steeper and steeper and steeper the longer they stay there, including freezing of draft picks, automatically moving them to the back of the first round, not to mention the pain in Dan Gilbert's wallet, which is the furthest thing from anything that I care about because I don't have any problem spending a billionaire's money. But it is absolutely a factor that Kobe Altman has to worry about because that billionaire is the one who pays his paycheck. So let's say Max Strus won't be ready until the All-Star break, perhaps later, for a team who needs to be a title contender. I think it'd be organizational malpractice by the front office if they aren't at least exploring those options. I said explore, not dump Max Strus for any trade you can possibly get, and he's terrible, awful, you have to get rid of him now. I said explore the options. So let's explore them a little bit. Max Strus has 1 year left on his contract after this season. And as I said, he might not play even close to half the games this year. So what the Cavs would need to find is a team that's willing to take on that extra year and doesn't care if he plays this season. So we're going to look for maybe expensive teams who you may want to get off of a guy who's signed beyond what Max Strus is next season, or maybe tanking teams who might be incentivized by a pick or two, preferably second rounders, because the Cavs have already emptied the first round pick chest until the 2030s, and as a second apron team, they actually do need to prioritize keeping those picks down the road if they can, because it might be the only way to either supplement the core that they have at that point with cheap talent or to rebuild the team after they inevitably blow it up to get out of the second apron hell. Think about the Celtics offseason they just had as an example of what I'm talking about. Every team that reaches the second apron is going to have to do some version of that at some point in time. The Cavs are no exception. So with that in mind, is there anything even worth exploring? Well, I did a bit of a dive on Spot Track to look for guys who make less than Max Strus and play in situations that fit one of those two scenarios that I just mentioned. And the list was not particularly long when we also want that player to be at least a reasonable facsimile of Max Strus's contribution and talent for this Cavs roster, because otherwise, what are you doing? And I came up with just a handful of names to even consider talking about. One would be maybe Terrence Mann, who makes $15.5 million, just a shade below what Max Strus makes, and is signed a year longer than Strus is, playing for the tanking Brooklyn Nets. If the Cavs found themselves expecting to still be without Strus and wanted to get another wing that can hit a shot, make a play, guard somebody a little bit, that could make some sense. Another guy that is somewhat plausible, I guess, is Daniel Gafford, who makes $14.3 million, and the Cavs might want to get off of his future money as part of a fire sale that is likely to take place in Dallas because Nico Harrison destroyed their franchise. But why would the Cavs want yet another center when we're already seeing that they aren't even playing Jarrett Allen enough? Another guy that could potentially fit the bill would be maybe like Dennis Schroeder. $14.1 million this year, signed beyond Strus's deal, and on the Kings, who are definitely a blow-it-up candidate. I guess if the Cavs are worried that they have too much injury concern between Lonzo Ball and Darius Garland, and maybe they don't think that Craig Porter Jr. is enough insurance, particularly when we're talking about a playoff setting, that could actually make some sense for them. Or how about a guy like Herb Jones, who makes $13.9 million and has an extension that's kicking in? The Pelicans are an absolute disaster, so they could want to blow it up. And I could see the Cavs actually being very interested in doing this. But I don't think that Max Strus plus a couple second-round picks is going to be the most competitive package that the Pels are able to get for a guy like Herb Jones. Now, keep in mind, in all of those scenarios, the Cavs would have to take on money beyond Max Strus's contract, which is only going to compound the second apron issue, the repeater tax issue, and Dan Gilbert's wallet like a lot. But is that a sacrifice that he's willing to make this year if he thinks it means hanging another banner in Cleveland? I can't know the answer to that question, and neither can you. But what I think I have answered so far is that there's not a ton of options that is going to make a lot of sense when you consider how important Max Strus is to this team when he does play. Now, if they were to get word that he was at risk to be out for, say, the season, then could they maybe treat this like a Ricky Rubio situation and just want to bring in maybe like two cheaper players or one guy that's maybe not as good as Max Strus, but just get some on the floor value out of that contract slot? Because otherwise you would have like $16 million almost in dead cap this season. Again, to win a championship, yeah, they might do that. But beyond Max Strus, even if the Cavs were to give up on their assumed stances and explore a trade for someone like Jarrett Allen, DeAndre Hunter, or Darius Garland, because Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley are not getting traded, duh, some options could open up a little bit. Jarrett Allen makes $20 million, DeAndre Hunter makes $23.3 million, and Darius Garland makes $39.4. I think in just the first few weeks of this season, it has illustrated just how valuable Darius Garland is for this team, especially on the offensive end. So I don't see a likely scenario where he's even considered if the front office wasn't committed to the core four. Still, I think they'd be committed to Darius Garland, at least during the season. Maybe if they were restructuring like the whole roster in the offseason, Darius Garland could be in play because they'd be planning multiple moves at that point. So you could try to move multiple pieces around to replace what you're losing in some form or fashion and try to make things fit better if you think that's the problem. But that's not happening at the trade deadline. And with DeAndre Hunter, he's a guy with unique size and a unique skill set, making that $23 million price tag a bargain in today's NBA. So I don't think you're replicating that in a trade for a guy at that number. And I don't think that you're going to get enough in another kind of deal either, where it's like multiple less good players. I don't think they're going to add up to what he can give you, again, at that number. So again, we're down to one guy, and it's Jarrett Allen, who's always been the one who's expected to be traded first if the Cavs were to break up the core four. But can you get better than what he provides for you for $20 million? It's real tough to find that scenario. Do you think maybe a guy like Santi Aldama out of Memphis for a more versatile fit next to Mobley and still keeping your size is enticing at all? Would Memphis maybe give you a pick as a sweetener on that because Jarrett Allen is the objectively better player in that scenario? How about the Hornets? Could you see Jarrett Allen as a center that they might want to pair next to LaMelo Ball for the future? Could you see maybe bringing somebody like Colin Sexton back or a 2-for-1 around Pat Connaughton and Trey Mann? Neither of those make any sense to me, but maybe they do to you. Or how about maybe one of the guys that we talked about tied to Max Strus? Could you talk the New Orleans Pelicans into building something on the framework of a Jarrett Allen for Herb Jones and Jose Alvarado? I at least think that you entertain that on both sides, but ultimately, I'm not sure it gets done. Let me rephrase. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. I think in this scenario, the Cavs lose a very important piece for their team. The Evan Mobley at the 5 minutes this year have gone, well, poorly. And maybe you could then say, well, what if New Orleans just swaps Yves Missi in instead of Alvarado? The money still works, but I think the Pels probably like him. And if they're going to really blow things up, I imagine they'd have a different target in mind for a package with Herb Jones in it rather than a center in the middle of his prime. I imagine they'd prioritize things like picks and young guys. Something we've established the Cavs don't have a whole lot of to play with. So basically, what I'm saying through this whole exercise is that if you're a Cavs fan who's worried about the way the season has started and thinks there's a trade out there that's just going to fix it, it's not impossible, but you're probably going to be disappointed. Would you want the Cavs to trade for anybody in this video? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and click subscribe to help me get to my goal. And if you just love basketball, watch this next.